I feel like I've seen enlightenment, and I thought it was going to be about levitating and telekinesis, and it's actually just about an increased awareness of how annoying I am. February 2nd, which is our official anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
We already celebrated, though.
Yeah, that's what we do. We do these celebrations. Yeah. We did your 40th birthday 2 months in advance. No, I mean, we celebrate early is what we do.
It's like, that's what we do, man. We celebrate the normal things that most people celebrate. Well, we don't.
We are crazy like this. Sometimes we do a cake with this tradition.
Dude, have you ever celebrated something before?
You gotta try it.
It's super normal.
We even have a song on birthdays. We sing.
Oh, yeah. We've got a special song.
Yeah. It goes, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear. And then we put the person's name into it.
Oh, this is genius.
Happy birthday to you.
This is genius. When did you come up with this?
I don't know. I guess, like it was something my parents did, and then we just kind of combined it. We get like wax sticks and we light them, and then you blow the wax sticks out.
So you were just programmed to do this. You don't really know what it means, where it comes from.
No, I mean, it's something really special and unique to us.
Okay.
Nice try. Nice try, buddy. I just meant that we celebrate early, and it's just been this.
Yeah.
Last couple weeks. Last couple events. Then your actual birthday was maybe kind of a dud.
No.
It didn't feel like a dud. I feel like I didn't do a very good job of making it special.
No, it was that surprise was plenty for the rest of my birthdays. That's enough.
Oh, good. Cool. Because I'm going to forget the rest of them.
Yeah. You're clear to forget.
Yeah, so we were out of town. It feels weird kind of recording right now because I feel like we just recorded an episode a few days ago, but that's because we did. We put out a latey.
So has enough happened in a couple days for us to talk about?
Yeah, we have a couple things that we were going to discuss on the last episode and we ran out of time. One of them is that Thomas Campbell, the author of My Big Toe, is that what it is?
Which is, toe stands for theory of everything.
Theory of everything.
So it's his big theory of everything.
He wasn't talking about his Morton toe?
No.
My long toe.
Yeah, you hadn't really heard much of Thomas Campbell, huh?
I haven't. I think there's a synchronicity between Ramin and me meeting and Thomas Campbell, because I found Ramin's art before we ever met, and I feel like he had Thomas Campbell on his podcast, or he referenced Thomas Campbell on his podcast or something. There's something there that doesn't matter at all, and I don't know why
He probably referenced him. I've never really deep dived him. Like, I got into a lot of these people that were kind of popular physicists and people that were coming at consciousness from a little bit more of a studied scientific perspective. I had heard a lot of really great quotes, or a lot of people talk about it, but I never really deep dive him until this podcast. Now I bought My Big Toe, and I've been listening to a lot of his other podcasts. But it was so cool to have somebody like that on Joe Rogan, just because of obviously the platform, to get a conversation from Thomas Campbell that tends to be like heady and pretty physicist based around consciousness, but like so many really great discussions that happen on that podcast that are like, he's really good at taking difficult concepts about consciousness and dumbing them down for the average person.
Yeah.
And so on that podcast, there were many points where I was just like, whoa, this is crazy that they're talking about this on Joe Rogan with that many views, that people are going to be, open to these kind of concepts. Joe's like, he has a lot of really good fringe people on that are somewhat woo, kind of in this new base of ideas of how the world works and who we are, but never somebody that's like really grounding it into an actionable kind of perspective. And Thomas Campbell does a really good job at that. But it's funny to watch him, bump up against Joe's scientific kind of materialistic way of thinking sometimes. That is funny to watch, because I think he's, pivoting multiple times in the conversation to try to be like, well, but we need to prove that factually. Like you should run some of those tests again publicly so everybody will really believe it. And, Thomas Campbell's of the belief, he's been doing this for a long time and has realized there's no benefit in doing that, is chasing the proof for people via scientific methods and stuff. The odd thing is he actually does have a lot of receipts. Like, he does have the ability to prove a lot of the far out concepts he has. But he's no longer like on that thread of needing it to be proved for everyone. He's more along the lines of like, I'm just going to be continuing to research and study the things he's passionate about, but sharing it with people that get it and that are curious. He's not trying to kind of convert everybody, because it's a futile thing. It's like, some of this stuff is not provable. It's feeling based. It's intuition.
Well, it's no mistake that this stuff is becoming mainstream at the same time that AI and video editing and everything else exists, because you're going to have more categories of reason than material senses in order to tap into any of this shit. And so it is really fun. It was really funny to watch. We listened to some of it in the car on the way home, and it's really funny to listen to Joe, who's open to this stuff, like, but does not have enough categories of reason for non-material, non-physical things. And so one of the questions he was asking was like, well, how did these ships crash? Don't they just know?
Yeah, or don't they have, if they have more advanced technology, why is it crashing here? Don't you think they would have the ability to not crash?
Humans have this like self-obsession that we are like the top of the food chain and the most interesting thing in the entire universe. And to some extent, I do think it's interesting to come here into this extreme limitation. But when you understand frequency, which you can't understand with just your material mind, when you understand frequency and density even, I have now connected that this thing I didn't have a name for is what they're speaking about with densities. It's like there are certain things that we do here that put out frequencies that could fuck a ship up that's existing on a different frequency and could break the ship or cause it to come down too far into density and then it falls to the ground or whatever. That just makes sense to me. I don't need anyone to explain that to me. The aliens kind of said that at one point, that like sometimes when I would be seeing a ship and I would try to take a picture of it and it's just mush in the camera, is like I'm seeing it more clearly because of where my frequency is than it's actually physically just kind of wobbling in and out.
And yeah, the tech is it's like our tech is operating on a different frequency resonance.
Right.
That's not necessarily compatible with the other one. So, yeah.
And so he goes, well, they knew, didn't they know we had radar? And it's like the ship crashed around the time that radar started to become prevalent. It's like, no, the entire universe is not orbiting what Earth is doing at every fucking moment.
And I think it's hard for us as like to fathom other world technology that doesn't have our physics as the basis for it to function. So we assume it's like, oh, why can't you just fly your ship better here? It's really advanced. Shouldn't you be able to?
Which is very linear. It's very advanced, meaning it started at radar.
Right. What is advanced to another world that developed in a completely different physics, different material, different astrology, different gravity? It's like you're going to get a completely different piece of tech. Yeah, and I think it's hard. It's funny to watch like certain people. They don't have the category yet, so they, are bending all different shapes to try to make it make sense that are still within the material world.
Right.
There's just so much nuance to some of these conversations that people get locked at because they don't have some other perspective of how to like make sense of something, And yeah, I think it's a lot of that is just through different mechanisms that a lot of people, we're not all practiced with, like the sensitivity of your body and intuition, all of those parts of like human experience that don't fit within a factual, studied, like repeatable process. There's a whole nother dimension that's like there with that. But we're also, we have this habit of like needing proof for us to accept it as true out of some fear that it's like, oh, if that isn't true and I accept it, then I'm cuckoo bananas, when it's like, it actually, there's a whole other perception of reality to see when you start viewing it that way.
Or you like you simply don't have the senses activated in order to perceive it. I was thinking about how like the more sensitive you are, the more you probably don't function in society very well. So if you're sensitive to your environment, or you're sensitive to paint colors, or you're sensitive to textures, or you have like any of that sensory stuff, means that you are probably more adept at understanding frequency. Because it's just simply like, if I go into an environment and they're blasting like really loud, aggressive music, or really loud music of any sort, I'm going to get overstimulated because it's too much. Like, and then the frequency of that, or the color of the lights, or the color of the paint on the walls, or if there's too many things on the walls, or if someone vibe is off. Like if I'm trying to have a conversation with someone and we're just on a completely different frequency, I'll notice it makes me feel kind of drowsy or frustrated or like I want to escape. And those are all things that make it difficult to operate in day-to-day life out in the physical reality, because that heightened sensitivity to every frequency that's not aligned with my frequency makes it difficult to function. And so I wonder if this is why people who are like neurodivergent or have what would otherwise be categorized as like mental health stuff are actually like, it's much easier for them to just understand like, oh, those two frequencies weren't compatible.
Yeah.
And that thing would otherwise be considered non-physical, but for whatever reason in the space, it got hemmed up, it got dropped.
I think it's clear to look at it that way too, that there's, all this information that's coming more and more coming out about, the frequency of LED lights and blue light is like not resonant with the human energy field. And so it's like, it's causing, discomfort for a lot of people, where it's like 20 years ago, we didn't notice that necessarily.
Right.
And now we're becoming more sensitive to it. And I think the final goal is kind of to realize like a lot of the tech and the way of life that we have built is based on a certain frequency system. I mean, it's everything. It's like the music has been tuned to 432 instead of 430, or I forget. I should know. I just off the top of my head, I don't remember, but it's been tuned differently. The light frequency is all out of whack. It's making us tired. Circadian rhythms are off. Obviously the exhaust from like all of our transportation is stuff that's like not harmonic. It's worked for us for a long enough time, but I think in this transition, it's like we're starting to learn that there's a different system potentially to move to that is more harmonic, that also involves using like opening up the ability to use new tech that we would say is like magic, but it's just not functioning now because we have a whole different frequency set up, So you can imagine the electromagnetic frequency that's on the earth that we're tapping into and affecting. We're doing it in a way that, to these other dimensional beings is archaic and slow, and it itself is the blocking to having this other tech come in and function. I feel like, looking at it that way, it becomes clear as day, like why we're kind of getting this disclosure of how everything, all the tech is not quite right, and that there might be a more harmonic adjustment to that by, learning this, whatever, back engineering the tech or just raising our consciousness into a new.
I mean, just imagine how much things would shift if there was just a base understanding that we have a magnetic field around us and that things affect the magnetic field. Mm-hmm. I mean, truly.
Which is so crazy because that's like, for most people, it's an obvious thing, but I would, still mainstream science has a bunch of reasons why that maybe isn't true. But it's crazy that's not like a universally accepted reality.
I mean, the vast majority of people do not understand that. For a long time, I don't like to be in close spaces with a lot of people. I was actually stoked when they said everyone had to stand 6 feet away from each other because that's really my preference, which, ironically, that's about how big your chunky ass aura is. But I can actually feel it when people are standing in my aura, and it's very uncomfortable. And then as soon as they're standing in my aura, my energy's processing their energy. And so it's overwhelming to me. So when, part of the reasons I'm glad I don't do stand up anymore is because it was a lot of standing in tiny ass rooms with a lot of people. You don't like
the stand up part of it. You don't like the standing.
Yeah, I don't like the standing up. The stage is fine because there's nobody else up there, but you're doing showcases and shit, you end up just having to kind of stand in a fucking packed. That's why I don't like New York City. Everything's too packed. And then you have all just these energy fields just all up in each other. And I'm very sensitive to things in it. And then like I can feel the refrigerator when I'm standing too close to the refrigerator. And I think that a lot of sickness and disease can probably be accessed through the magnetic field and treated through the magnetic field. But, most people think that, not most people, who knows what most people think now, but it's until very recently was not at all recognized as a fact that people have a magnetic field and that the aura is just the magnetic field.
Yeah.
And that magnetic field is affected by all the things that we do.
Yeah, it's super sensitive. It's funny because as a kid, if you just logically think, like I remember as a kid being dumbfounded by the idea that we're all humans that has this like kind of perpetual energy and we're not plugged into the wall. Like, like as a kid you learn, it's like, okay, everything that's got power that can like run is either plugged into the wall or it's got this battery that's going to run out in a couple months. And so you're having to always like manage energy. It's like, and then when you think about the human body, you're like, well, how are we walking around just like no battery? Well, technically we have like a battery, but you're not plugged into the wall. So like, how is this functioning? How does this go 80, 90 years? It's just like Wi-Fi compatible, just running around. Like where's the energy coming from? And as a kid, you're like, your parents are like, oh, it's the food. You eat food, and that's where the energy comes from. So it's like, okay, it still doesn't quite make sense to me.
That's such a projector thing to think.
But, and then I get older, and then you realize it's like, oh, all of these electronics, they do have a magnetic field, like around them. And, as a kid, you figure that out just via like, so many different ways. Like if you have your cell phone near a speaker, it's like it's communicating. So there's all this, like there's stuff going on in the air, and most electronics, they do have like a resonant vibration to them that's putting off electromagnetic frequency. And so it's like, I don't know, it's some things within consciousness and just trying to understand life can really be accessed through just like really base thinking, like kind of logical, just, and to me, it's pretty clear if you just think through basic facts. Humans running around by themselves, not plugged into the wall, they're energetically doing something, and it's off-putting some kind of electromagnetic field.
Right.
It's all there if you just think about it, but it's something that we're not really encouraged to think about. Like I've never heard anybody else have that existential crisis and go, wait, but we're not plugged into the wall.
That's a wild thing to think as a kid. But...
Yeah, this is so natural to me because I would like that. It doesn't make sense. And if you just think about it long enough, you can pretty easily come to the conclusion that is, we're electromagnetic beings and we are putting off. There's a field around us that is a part of us that we're sensitive to. It makes a lot of sense when you just simply think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if people were tuned into their energy, they would become privy to ways in which their energy is being drained pretty easily. So yeah, I thought that was interesting in the Rogan interview was just and I think we're going to see a lot of this as these things start to become more, I don't want to say mainstream because I think in some ways the mainstream is over, but as the Cross the Sleeping Phoenix approaches and as fourth density takes hold, we are going to collectively, most of us, be embodying a more supernatural reality, for lack of a different way to put it. We're just coming out of something extremely limited and we're going to go back to a higher level of consciousness or whatever. And I didn't feel like Rogan was like closed off. I thought it was interesting how open he was to a lot of it. And I think that he's a good representation of like the bro collective. I think that podcast is a great gauge of where a lot of the collective is. I know it's like controversial to some people for some reason. I don't really get it, but
yeah.
The part where he was asking him, can you prove can you prove the experiment? Like he was talking about an experiment where they were communicating in 2 separate rooms.
Yeah, they essentially like met up in the astral. They were trying to prove, it was with Bob Monroe, and it's a long time ago. And they had been doing a lot of work in the astral, like individually, but then they had this experiment. They wanted to see if they could meet up and see the same things and test that. So they're 2 people, isolated rooms, very far apart. You can't hear anything. And then they both go in, they record video and audio of each room, and they're in there for a couple hours. They have a whole experience. They see each other in the astral. They talk. They go places. They're talking about what they each see. And afterwards, they come out and they go through the video. And sure enough, everything was aligned. Like they were talking about seeing the same thing. All of the timing was exactly right. So it very much proves. And both of them, when asked, they're like, "Yeah, this is what I saw. I was with them." So it's a really good experiment to prove that there's something going on there. And it was a long time ago. And right as he tells the story, Joe's like, "Oh my God, that's amazing. Like, where's the video? Where's the tapes? We got to see the tapes." And Thomas is like, "Oh yeah, I don't know where those videos are. Maybe maybe he had them somewhere. He hid them. I'm not really sure." And then Joe's mind just bends. He's like, "What? Oh my God, we got to do that again. Like we need to set that up. Like if you could just show that experiment to everybody, like everybody would be convinced." And that's where then Thomas is like, "No, he bucks against it." And it's like, it's not worth doing. And then they kind of argue for a minute. And he essentially says, like, I mean, there were multiple reasons. He actually, the next couple of days later on a different podcast, he talked about why he didn't go into it and why there was pushback. Yeah. And one of the main reasons was that it doesn't work to prove something that is non-material and very much like ethereal. You can't use material tests to prove it. It doesn't work like that. They get close. Like this one was a very good test, but he's also just, he voices his opinion that like you're trying to convince a bunch of people that are come in skeptical already, just wastes a bunch of time. The focus then becomes, oh, this guy's a shill. It's not about the detail information and like constructive criticism about the test. It's just, that can't be true. So he must be trying to get money, or whatever. And he's been doing this forever. So he's had that a lot and has just realized that's not the avenue to go if you're going to try to share this knowledge and, convince people. So, and you could feel that. I mean, Thomas was very unbothered by it. He's like, "No, I'm not going to do that. It's a waste of time." And Joe just was like, "Oh my God, like we're going to miss it all if you don't do this," not being able to realize the subtlety in this, that it's like, you can't prove some of these things. It's about, either having an experience with it to understand it or trusting and kind of having a feeling that this might be true is going to be more of the way to it than trying to get all the facts fucking dialed in together so you can prove. It's just, we're never going to get there. It's like, nobody can prove what love is. Nobody even knows what consciousness is. So we can't be approaching some of these more etheric experiences with data and facts. It just doesn't work.
It's just literally scientific materialism, is that we have to quantify it and prove it. And we have to prove it to someone outside of the people that are experiencing it. Where it's like, if you're not experiencing it and you're not experiencing anything synced up with it, watching a video of me experiencing it is not going to suddenly sync you up with it. That comes from you just opening up.
Yeah.
And trusting yourself. Like when people, ask, like, how come I don't experience anything supernatural? I hear all these people talk about it and I believe in it, but I never experience it. A lot of times it just kind of comes down to the people who easily talk to their guides or easily tune into the ether or telepathic or whatever. They're open. And, she said that in the telepathy tapes, right? She said, or no, we listened to her on, that's the other thing we listened to. We listened to Kai from Telepathy Tapes. I forget her last name.
On Tetragrammaton.
On Tetragrammaton with Rick Rubin. And she says that the parents struggle to communicate back telepathically because they have to completely empty out. And that's the really funny barrier to entry for materialist mindset to access these things, because all of these things exist in your imagination, and materialism told you to disregard your imagination your entire life. And the reason that it's easy for me or like Lacey or, other people, where people have been like, I want to experience the things you guys experience, is our comfort with not being right, our comfort with being open and doing something that feels extremely vulnerable. And I've always joked, like, it's my loose grip on reality. Like, it's my loose grip on a firm reality that has to be concrete and fact that makes it easy for me to access these things. Yeah. But when I'm doing like a reading, I do like energy updates on the Patreon where I pull cards kind of as a general reading. And I have to be like empty for those. And so if my mind is really busy, it's hard for me to do it. And I have to just like, sometimes I just have to like shake out and just kind of empty up. And then I have to trust whatever's showing up in my imagination. And so it was something like last week where a toilet showed up. And so I was like, I know that when I'm empty like that and pictures show up in my mind, it means something. And so I'm like, someone's on a toilet right now. And of course someone's watching it on a toilet. I've had like barbecue chips pop up or like a really random song or something. And it's just trusting what's ever there in the mind, right? Not the mind, in the third eye mind. I don't know. When you close your eyes and you imagine an apple, like that's it. It's your imagination. But materialism taught you to disregard your imagination. I don't think it's any mistake that children are put into school when they're 5 years old, when their imagination could really be shaped into something very powerful. They're kind of put into a hyper material reality where just facts are crammed into their brains. And, that stuff starts to solidify around age 7. And I think that you could really hone the imagination and the creative ability around that time. But like in this culture, we've been taught to completely disregard everything in the imagination. So the barrier to entry for people who are hypermaterial in their thinking is that they don't even know where their imagination is.
Yeah.
They have to be like trained to use their imagination. And what I think something like and I don't know a lot about the Monroe Institute, but the idea of people who are already open and already get it, studying this stuff for the purpose of developing the human potential, because we've all been conditioned into materialism, having scientists who already know it exists, studying it for the purpose of helping people who also know it exists access it easier is awesome. Studying it so they can prove it to skeptics is a huge waste of energy. Yeah. And I think when you've tuned into energy to the extent that you're able to experience these things, you get that it's a fucking giant waste of time.
Yeah.
It's like this energy could be harnessed to actually help people that already get it, or it could be harnessed to just fucking enter into a dumb fucking debate with people who can't see it. And that's
what I love. He actually said that he put most of his energy now is into teaching people how to have an out-of-body experience, like giving very simple descriptions and like shows you how to have the experience, so then you can be convinced by your own experience.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's just such a better way. It's like he has spent years going out of the body and has studied it. Surely he knows some tricks of he's developed tricks to do it better. If you just share that and teach that to people, they just have to be a little curious about it. And then you can teach them how. They go have an experience, done. You've convinced them, and they now are having the experience and they know how to continue to do it, to continue to expand. Such a better use of the energy than, and you got to spend a lot of money doing these dumbass tests. It's like how much money you have to raise just to do like a blind placebo test. Is insane. And why go that route if there's not going to be much promise to it?
Right. And then the energy exchange is exhausting. I loved what he said on the other podcast where he's talking about why he didn't answer it. So when you understand frequency, you understand that the band of frequency that you end up on when you're trying to prove yourself to someone who doesn't understand you fucking sucks. I mean, think about any time you've had that life experience where someone has a preconceived notion of what you're doing based on their own projection, and then they're kind of putting you on the stand and you're trying to defend your own perspective. It's exhausting, right? And so, yeah, it reminds me of that experience I had that I think I've already talked about on this podcast, but I don't know if it's one we got rid of, where my friend who's a scientist was making the show about the intersection of like spirituality and psychosis. And I said, like, I've experienced telepathy, and then I could tell that he wanted me to like quantify it. And I was just getting like progressively more uncomfortable. And then I went into the bathroom and the aliens were like, we don't give a fuck about proving ourselves to the physical reality. Like, I already knew for myself that I hate the way it feels when people are wanting me to prove it. Because when I'm in a room of open people who believe in this stuff, I can very accurately pull the energy and read the energy. The second it starts to feel like I'm doing a parlor trick, I can't access that part because I'm not open. I don't feel vulnerable. Right. So I'm in the mind, and now I'm thinking about whether or not you think I'm crazy or whatever. Yeah. And so, which I think would make it very difficult to replicate a lot of these things in a lab environment where it's not two people that really trust each other. And he talked about how much he and that guy, Bob, what was it?
Well, it was a different guy he did it with. Bob Monroe was the guy who was overseeing it, but it was a friend of his. Yeah, and they were really connected.
They were really connected. And so it's all this stuff that you can't even really explain to someone who's very materialist thinking, or someone who's into that like masculine pushing, driving, striving, discipline energy. It's like, no, this requires vulnerability. It requires openness. And a lot
all these things that like most people wouldn't think are have any effect on the scientific output.
Right.
It's like, it doesn't matter how close you are. It's just you grew up together, you know each other really well. It's like, yeah, that's the integral important aspect of why this phenomenon is working. And like moving into that, instead it's like they just overlook any of the subtleties, thinking that has nothing to do with proving the experiment, when it's like all of the subtlety is the point of it. And it's such a dance, and it's kind of in a realm that people don't believe is important to any kind of testing or an experience, that there's like a really subtle, sensitive, nuanced place to get in your consciousness for it to happen.
Right.
I like when he talked about the remote viewing, like they do a lot of classes with that too, and how he had somebody come in that had never done it. It was like some kind of class or something, but she had never done it before, and she didn't really care much about it. She wasn't trying to prove it for herself. She's just kind of like, oh, this is cool. I'll just go through the motions and see what happens. And it was a remote viewing thing where they had to do like 10 envelopes, just random numbers. And so the number envelope goes in front of her, just a number, and she just starts jotting down what's in her head, images, whatever. And she gets all 10 exactly right. And then they tell her that, and she's like, oh my God, like I guess I'm a natural. Like I wasn't even trying. This is great. Like I'm really good. Like, okay, send me in like 10 more. I'm going to do it again. And then she does it again and misses all of them. And it's because, and he talks about it, it's like because there is a dance, there's this like really subtle place to be in consciousness to open that door. And if you are, doubtful of it, that's going to cloud it. If you are overly confident with it and think you've got it all, that's going to cloud it. It's this really like this middle place of unknowing. It's like knowing that you don't know that you know, and you're right in that middle kind of questioning place. And he said even like the people that are like really high caliber remote viewers, this is what they're doing all the time. They're always, when they're jotting the stuff down and they get the hit, they're like, pyramid. It looks like a pyramid. Tall. They're really tall beings. Like they seem super tall. I don't know. It's a question. They're just very curious and playful with it. And that's how they're so accurate. When they have some kind of an agenda or they've gotten too identified with like, I'm a remote viewer, it's clouding it out.
Yep.
So it's such an art. It's such a dance in this subtle realm that most people are not really familiar with, or most people doubt is real, you know? And that's that thing. I think as kids, we're just like kind of always pushed that in certain times your imagination is not good to trust, you know, when it's like you're a kid and there's a monster in the closet and your mom's like, that's not real. That's just in your imagination. Don't pay attention to that. As a kid, you're like, when I saw the fucking monster, I experienced it. It's like, you can't make me believe that it's not there.
That's just in your head.
But what you can do is make me believe that it's in my head, but it's not real.
Yeah.
And so then you slowly start blotting that out to the point where you become an adult. And if you are too caught in your imagination, then you're considered like weird and out there, is psychosis. And like, this guy's just imagining things are walking around him. It's like, no, that's like, that is potentially very real. And it's a personal experience you might be having that other people can't see, but it doesn't mean it ain't real. It's like more real than you think. And it's like working on that imagination, really trusting it and working with it more and just believing kind of anything that it shows you for a while, I think it can help hone in some of those more subtle things. But it really does seem to be like an art to be able to work with the cosmic consciousness in any form. Like everything that I just explained is exactly the same way that I collaborate with the muse. Like, I can't come into the studio with a super agenda of what I want to happen. And I can't come in with no inspiration or kind of motivation to do something either. It's this very middle ground. I'm stoked to be down here and creating, but I don't know what's going to happen. And that's when the real magic occurs with the muse. So it's a similar thing. I feel like that's just essentially what, like, all the tech and stuff that we're trying to remember about our body and about consciousness is existing in that subtle realm that we have just not been encouraged to use or trust and believe. And we're just learning how to get it back online. But I think it's just in this weird dancing, like, subtle realm where it all exists.
Well, that's like, that's feminine, right? So it's all feminine energy. It's the void. It's the receptive.
The womb.
And it's the creative.
Yeah.
Right? But it does not have absolute concrete answers. And that's why I think people can't access it. I remember my stepmom had the Time Life series of the supernatural, and I was so obsessed with the supernatural when I was young because I feel like I had a sense that it existed, but I was definitely coming at it from a very materialist perspective. And so I would try to do all these ESP tests, but the second you're trying to do an ESP test, you're in your conscious mind. And through like hypnosis school, I learned, the conscious mind, it's where you'll like default to, but it's like the worst part of your brain. You're the worst part of your mind for a lot of things, like when you're learning how to skateboard or roller skate or drive a car and you're still doing it with your conscious mind, it's the worst you'll ever be at it, right? And once that moves into something your body knows how to do without the conscious mind, you're good at it.
You excel. Yeah.
But if you are walking down the street and you suddenly start thinking consciously about walking, you're going to start walking funny. It's like the worst way to do things, but it's the first thing that people do. And so if I think in my conscious mind, red square, you with your conscious mind are not going to be able to hear that. However, if I go into the third eye mind, whatever you want to call this, the imagination, and I sit there in an open energy and picture a red square and you go into your imagination and you allow something to come into your awareness, you're way more likely to get it.
Yep, totally.
But someone who isn't aware of that entire other point of awareness, and there are some people who can't. Like, there's some people who like can't picture. Have you ever seen the like chart of how to know how? It's like one of the clairaudiences. There's like clairvoyance, I think clairaudience is you hear things, but even then you're hearing them in your imagination. You're not hearing them audibly.
Right.
So like I have that, but I am hearing it. It's a different part. I don't know how to describe it, but clairsentience is just kind of the knowing. I always butcher these, but I think clairvoyance is the pictures. So can you imagine, right, everyone at home, can you imagine an apple in your imagination? So you can see an apple now.
Yeah.
Can you change the color of the apple?
Yeah.
What color is your apple?
Blue.
Okay, you got to be a weirdo. Can you make it shiny?
It's a magical apple. Yeah.
Can you give it gradients of different colors?
Mm-hmm.
Can you take a bite out of it and see the bite taken out of it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you have really good, I think that's clairvoyance. Lots of people can't even picture the apple, or if they can picture the apple, it's gray. They can't make the apple do anything. And then some people straight up cannot. Aaron, my podcast partner from Mormon Method, like cannot picture anything in his mind.
Yeah. I'm like curious with it because you've talked about this before, and I just wonder if it, because with my own exploration in these things, like having to visualize things, imagine an experience, I've always had like a certain experience with that. Like I'm seeing the apple, but it is not like the way I see an apple in the physical reality. It is different. It's like the same thing you're saying. It's like if you're clairaudience, you hear something come to you, but it's not audible in the same way. So it's like information. But so like I just wonder if this assessment, like however they got this test, is because somebody is they're asking to visualize an apple, and they're doing that in their imagination, but they're not seeing it appear like a hologram in the 3D reality. And so then they're going, no, I don't see it. Like, I don't know what you're talking.
It's there nothing. And they can't even perceive it. That's what I think it is. Is that you're trying too hard. You're
trying too hard, and you're expecting to actually see a hologram pop up in front of you.
Yeah.
Which would be like an external event happening to you, not something that you're generating, And so I think I just wonder if that's where the confusion is understanding what visualizing actually is. Like, it's not like the material world. It's similar, but it's in this other place, And so that's how I don't, at times I can experience like clairaudience or visual stuff like accentuated, whether that's a psychedelic state or just an emotional state. It will be kind of more vivid, or there'll be very clearer sounds. But in basis, like if I'm asked about it, I can do it, but it's just I get the sense that it's not what people think it is.
That's what I always thought. Like we did like whole episodes on this back in Mormon and the Meth Head when I found this out, because I was not aware that there are not people that have an inner dialogue. Although if I'm honest, I could not hear my own thoughts until after I woke up. I have no memory of an inner dialogue previous to waking up. When I look back to my life before I woke up, I retroactively can hear the inner dialogue of all of it, the subconscious and whatever. I had no inner awareness of that. But it's in the same place where a song gets stuck in your head.
Yeah.
And there's different voices. And so when I say like the alien said, it's like I don't have like an audible dude talking in my ear. It's in the same place where the radio is playing some fucking song I don't want it to play.
Yeah. That's the thing, is like you can't, people don't, again, they're looking for something that's not there. But like when I say, let's like think of a sentence. I drove my red blank to the store today. everybody just said car in their head, right? Probably. Or you said bike. But like you said it in your head and now you're listening to me again. That was it.
Yeah.
If you filled in the blank without seeing it and you got the word, like that was there was a word delivered into your head and you have an inner dialogue. Did you hear it audibly? Probably not, but you heard it internally. You pronounced it. Or we could all just sit here and quietly say the word now. There, you said it. It's in the ether, but you didn't hear it audibly. And it's like, that's the thing. That's where it is, you know?
Can you feel like a liquid running down your arm?
Yeah. I mean, like if I do it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say to probably get a feeling, I would have to like sit here for a second to actually, but yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, so you have a lot of them. And I think they are like the ability to sing. Some people are naturally born with the ability to sing and other people have to take lessons to be able to do that, you know? And I think a big part of it is that we are taught to ignore it. And so most people are walking around with an imagination and an ability to visualize things, and no one ever taught them, by the way, that ability to visualize things, you can shape reality with that.
Yeah.
And you can read where things are at, you know? So when, you know, they have psychics that work with the cops or whatever, if there's a missing child, all that person is doing is trusting the things showing up in that space, in that imaginal space, the exact same imaginal space where you're imagining an apple. But we're just not taught to use it. And so I love the idea of scientists starting to shift toward focusing on consciousness in order to advance the human capacity in consciousness. I think that's really cool. There was something that she said, that Kai person said on her interview with Rick Rubin. I guess I lost it. I think these two things happening at the same time are really interesting. I think that telepathy tapes will end up being a huge timeline shift.
Yeah.
In the normalization process. I think the people using it as an opportunity to debate whether or not it's real are just, I don't know, they're kind of wasting their energy. I think, you know, for the most part, this group of people have been experiencing this for a long time. They don't need you, outsider, to tell them whether or not it's true. It's just giving them an opportunity to come out of the closet. And then the materialists are going to debate it based on this kind of, well, I haven't experienced, you know what I mean? Like, I haven't experienced it and no one in a book has ever told me that it's true, or we haven't been able to replicate it, and we won't be able to replicate it because you're not trusting the unseen. And so this could be happening right in front of your face, and until you open up more categories of reason or more points of awareness, what a split that will be of people living in a kind of non-physical reality versus people living. Oh, that's what I was thinking. So she was talking on the show, and I'm sure this was like something that happened in the actual telepathy tapes, but she was talking about how when they are speaking telepathically, they're not saying English sentences in a linear fashion. It's you're downloading packets of information. And so when you're communicating telepathically, it is a download. And when people talk about downloads, I got a download about this or whatever, you're probably just, and I'm not going to pretend to understand the entirety of this, but as someone who experiences a lot of downloads, like I don't know where those are coming from. I assume they're coming from some future version of me or some higher consciousness or the aliens or whatever. But when I get a download, it's like I instantly know the entirety of this. And that was something, I didn't have the language of downloads when I was first waking up. But I had the ability to kind of just point my consciousness at something and then know how it works, know the underpinnings of it. You know, I didn't have to read a book about it. I just understood it almost as if I was accessing the Akashic records on anything I looked at. Yeah. And you know, we could do that when we're on psychedelics. It's very easy. And then it happens. I say it happens quite a bit still now. I have to be open for it to happen. It's going to be really rough, I think, for people who are really deeply conditioned by linearity and material facts to understand that people, because she talks also about savants and how people who shouldn't know things, and that's something that science is aware of. They're downloading it from somewhere, and everything is out there. Everything is out there for you to very quickly download. And I feel like chatbots are a physical mirror of the human ability to do that.
Yeah.
But I'm here for this portion of reality because I think this is, I cannot fucking believe how supernatural things are getting so fast, how many people are understanding these things and able to speak this language. And I think you can only speak this language if you've accessed this part of your consciousness. And I used to be afraid of like scientific materialists because I felt like I could never, that they all just wanted to win in a debate. And I felt like there wasn't language or containers to explain it to them. It's like, I see where you're coming from, but I can't make you understand where I'm coming from. So I'm going to look crazy.
Yeah.
In this,
you got to use all the right terms and
yeah. And it's like, and I literally, the terms, you don't understand them because you can only understand this if you've experienced it. And you guys are kind of mean, you know? So it is, in watching that or listening to that interview with Rogan, there were so many times where I wanted to like try to connect the dots because I feel like I do have, you know, like you could tell people imagine the apple. You can kind of make people understand where these things are happening, but it's coming. I think it's coming very fast. It's obvious that the everything is shifting to something way more supernatural very fast.
I think I haven't heard a lot of people talk about this around the telepathy tapes, but I think it's one of the biggest things to consider next if we go, okay, it's undeniable. Telepathy looks to be real. Now, how can I learn how to do it? And what does it look like if we're all telepathic? Or like, if this is possible, like what does a reality look like if we all can do that? I think in general, everybody kind of wants to go, whoa, that's real. Oh, I want to try it. Can I do that? But that's pretty much as far as we get. If you imagine though, like, okay, tomorrow, everyone's telepathic and we're all online. Now go live life and do what you've been doing. So many things would become more difficult and change. Because one of the biggest things about this reality of like how it functions is you can keep motherfucking secrets.
Yeah.
I can manipulate you and tell you I'm doing one thing for one reason, and I can get away with it if I'm really good. If you're telepathic, I can't get away with that anymore.
Precisely.
And that's such a beautiful thing. But it's also a bit of a heavy thing when you do have a reality that's built on deception and kind of keeping shit to yourself, only allowing so much of yourself to be seen to protect whatever your agenda is or whatever the truth is about you that you don't want people to see. And that is a motivating factor in so many aspects of life. I consider myself a very honest person. Like my whole life is very always trying to tell the truth and do the right thing. And when I started to wake up and decondition a lot of my life, I realized I was a fucking real chronic liar. Like because I was a people pleaser. And so the lying was not overt, like
malicious.
In your face, malicious. Right. It was deceptive in a way for me to make myself feel safe. And that's that kind of shit. It's like you realize how much you're motivated by those things. If you're telepathic immediately, like we got a lot of shit to work out with people. You can't hide from your mistakes anymore. You can't hide from what you really feel like, because somebody's gonna be able to read it and feel it. And so it's a beautiful thing for a collective, but it's also, when you see where we're coming from, why there's so much difficulty in accepting that this is true. Because if it is true, like the way you're running your reality has to now shift. Like, what are you going to do about all those secrets? You know, you either have to face them, be honest with them, or figure out how to lie in the telepathic realm, you know? And so I think that's one thing, like nobody's really considering sometimes when this new tech or new ideas are coming in. Once we get past the point of debating whether it's real or not, when it is real, like what do we do now to integrate that? What does reality look like if we all now have telepathic abilities and 0-point energy? Well, the entire fucking reality shifts. Like everything gets flipped on its head.
Project 2025 definitely doesn't matter if
yeah, there's so many of these things.
And it's all happening. I think the reason that people are going through all of these dark nights of the soul and all of this awakening process, and we're just being driven and kind of pushed by the background frequency to become honest and to become authentic and to know ourselves and to understand ourselves, is all leading us to a open field of telepathy. I remember, because I was not honest when I was super full of shit. And was kind of not even aware of the fact that I was full of shit, because I didn't have access to that internal dialogue until in the rear view, and was driven by subconscious desires and, you know, stories that I was playing out over and over again, and a raging fear of rejection. So I was very manipulative to kind of avoid ever feeling rejection. Just really not honest at all. Once again, not like maliciously, but just, and also was just kind of a chronic liar about just kind of making up stories or whatever, which I do think helped me become a storyteller. But just super full of shit. And then, you know, I went through my awakening. That made me more honest in some ways. And then for a few years in my early awakening, I had a very magic boyfriend who's not with us anymore, but a lot of what like drew me to him is he had weird powers, and I was like trying to understand how they worked. But maybe like not even a year into our relationship, I did lie about something. I did something, and I was trying to imply that he did it. And he didn't even catch that, because I was like laying the groundwork or whatever. I was extremely manipulative. And he goes, "What did you just lie about?" And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. Because I didn't even really know I did it until he called me on it, because it was just
kind of automatic at the time.
Yeah. And he said, "Well, you definitely just lied about something because you put up a partition." And I was like,
where you got partition
That's
from?
where I got partition from.
Oh, that's crazy.
And so I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "When people lie, they put up a partition. They hide the lie behind the partition. I can't hear what's behind the partition, but I heard the partition go up."
That's
sick. How I learned that, because then I was suddenly tuned in the ether where that happens. And I was just like doubled down and was like, "No, for sure I didn't." He's like, "Well, people don't put up a partition unless they're lying about something. So I guess if you don't want to tell me, it's fine." But I heard it.
What a badass.
And after that, I started becoming very honest of anything that I knew, because then I was like, I could hear it, and I was like, can everyone hear that?
Yeah.
You know? And now I can just hear, once you can like access the ether, and you don't have a ton of biases. Because if you have a lot of biases and you're playing out stories on people, you really can't hear what the fuck is happening because you're casting everyone into a role. So if you're someone who has to be a victim in every story, or you think all people that look like this, or all people that have this or this, you're not going to be able to hear the ether because you're actually just stuck in the part of your consciousness, your ego. You're like stuck in the part of your consciousness that is playing out subconscious things.
It's like the addiction to labeling everything immediately for safety. This person's that way. You're
casting people into roles. And so once you're casting someone into a role, you're projecting a thing onto them that is not this. And this applies to how people interact with the government and everything else. You cast them into a role, and then you actually can't see what's actually happening because you're playing out a loop that you've been playing out for lifetimes. So part of the reason that we are becoming aware of those things is so that we can have more access to the ether. But when you've put that stuff aside, and you might notice for some people, it's like when I don't know someone, I can read it really well. But then if they're in my actual life, I can't read it. And that's because the emotional attachment is causing you to play a story on them.
Biases.
But once again, like opening up, like emptying out, then you can hear what's happening in the ether. And so I can't necessarily, a lot of times I can hear what the actual thing is because people say it in their words without realizing they're saying it. But the ether is very loud.
Yeah.
And people who know how to access the ether hear all your bullshitting. And there are a lot of people who can access the ether. And because then I got clean. I taught that to my sister who's like not even into this stuff. And you'll still hear her say like, but then I heard in the ether that whatever. And so that is the 4D. The ether is like the shared mind space. And that shared mind space where you're having all your thoughts is actually not that closed.
Yeah.
You think it's closed because you're surrounded by people who can't hear it. But it's actually a lot more open and accessible unless you set an intention to close it. But what I learned... But there's a ton of energy gets used on those partitions. That's why I really can't believe I was that big of a liar when I was young, because I had all those partitions up and I was managing all those different stories. It's exhausting.
Manifesting generator, just getting her practice in.
When you become honest and open, you realize it's just easier to be an open book. Yeah. It's easier to just not have
way less energy wasted.
Secrets. Yeah. And so during the planning of your surprise party, you kept picking up the stuff in the ether. So in one of the earliest episodes of this podcast, you go on this weird rant about a surprise party.
And how I've never had one.
No, you used it as like an analogy for something. So you're like, so let's say someone is planning a surprise party for someone. And I'm like, oh my God. So I started kind of consciously using partitions to hide it. And I gave myself brain fog because it's really exhausting to exist in a closed, to hold your secrets or whatever.
Yeah.
So I have a couple things from the entirety of my life that are like in a vault somewhere that are like, I'm just not, it's fine. I can have a couple things. But in day-to-day life, if I'm annoyed with something and I'm trying not to say it to you, you can almost always tell that there's something there, vice versa. A lot of times when we experience something, I feel like we talked about this on an episode, then we threw that episode out, right? But like
about the party, the birthday party stuff. Well, because there was another time that when you were, where I was also like gathering information in the ether without knowing it. It was about this party, but then I did something else where I was talking about. Oh, I said, like, it feels like you're going behind my back or something. You're like on my phone.
You had a nightmare. You had a nightmare that I was
cheating on me and like
right in front of your face, but behind your back. Yeah. That's all you picking shit up in the ether.
Yeah. But it's funny because in those stances too, it's like I had no motivation to do that. I was just going about my day and kind of authentically responding and just doing my thing, that it naturally came in, that I was like, there was information around that I was feeling and picking up on. And so just was open and discussed it, and which makes you go, "Oh, fuck,
Yeah.
I gotta hide it more."
And then once I started hiding it, like truly, it was giving me brain fog.
Yeah.
And then I had to do a whole live stream talking about it to kind of get it out of the way so that I could talk about other things.
I think that is too. There is a like when I'm saying that there's like, if we're all telepathic, there's no secrets. I think from the reality we know now, what we would call secrets that are just like actually off-mitting information, we don't think it is. It's going to change that. But I do think at a more advanced level, like once we're really in that reality and we're telepathically connected, that there are ways to not make everything visible.
Right.
Obviously, it's like, so there are partitions, or you can intentionally, hide something that you're not wanting to be communicated. But I think it's probably based on like some other kind of mechanism. Like as long as you're not manipulating and lying and trying to trick someone, like that energy is going to be read elsewhere in the ether. Maybe not the exact secret, but you're going to be able to sense it. And so it's like, I think there's probably an advanced way to, when we're all connected telepathically, to still keep certain things that are individually you and private. Like you can do that. It's not like we're all telepathic and I'm going to be able to see all the fucking crazy nuances in your life as like a list that's right here in front of me.
Yeah, it's not, because it's not like linear.
Yeah.
And it's more like pinging. And so let's say the couple of things that I keep private about experiences I've had in my life, if we were watching a movie and someone else had those experiences, the fact that I've chosen not to say those things out loud, you probably would hear a ping in the ether.
Like, oh,
you would hear the way that my energy is reacting with that thing in a way that you wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, I get a solid picture of what happened here. But you would be able to tell, like, oh, there is a pinging happening. And it's so great because,
like, in a reality like that, like, we're all not going to be able to be tricked so easily anymore.
Precisely.
So much of what this reality, why it's so fucked right now, is there's some real high trickery going on that is grabbing our attention and placing it wherever it wants all the time. So it's that deep manipulation that has like gotten us all programmed to be a way we don't want to be, like can't occur anymore in that reality. It's a whole different level of experience and exchange. I still think that there's probably like some level of manipulation and vying for energy in a fourth density reality, but it's on a whole different caliber. It's like a completely different chessboard that we'll be playing.
Right.
And I love that because I'm fucking sick of the secret thing. It's like everybody's got secrets and you can't tell. It's like the most frustrating thing listening to all this information coming out about disclosure and aliens and drones and stuff. And like every goddamn whistleblower is like, I can tell you 2 words and it's UFO and alien. I can't say anything else. I'm glad I could be of service. It's like, what the fuck? Why can't you tell us anything? Like right when we're getting to the, oh, okay, and then what? Well, it's highly classified. I'm not allowed to tell you that. It's like, fucking why do we have to have so many of these damn secrets?
It's so annoying.
It's the basis of why our country's so fucked. It's because it's like built on this fun little college secret society thing that got way out of control and is like now a gargantuan like system behind the veil that like seems to be like everybody in government was a part of that club, and they've all agreed that they can't tell anybody outside. And we're looking out for you guys though. We're good people. We just can't tell you anything.
Yeah.
So
it's
annoying.
the same thing in the telepathy tapes. Is like all these people are having these experiences, but they can't say anything because they'll get ostracized.
Which the other thing about the telepathy tapes is so insane is that like the people that are arguing this isn't real is such a insane line to take, because like one of the only excuses to explain it all is that like every single one of these kids is playing you. Like they're all together and they're all lying. They're all agreeing to do the same lie and trick. is so extreme that that's harder to believe than telepathy is real.
Well, I think that people, the chick that we watched that discredited it is implying that the agenda of the parents and the teachers is to like plant the seeds or to fraudulently do the spelling to, you know, promote this. But then you're just like, that argument is coming from someone who's not actually listening to and has no ability to read the vibe, because these parent people are all like, no, I've kept this a secret for a really long time because I don't want to be treated like this.
Yeah. Again, it's like that the entire phenomena of somebody questioning and going, no, I think you're tricking us. You're lying because you want to make money. Like that idea can't happen anymore if we're all telepathic. You can't get away with being like, oh, I'm just I wrote a book and this theory of everything, and this is like my idea. But their real agenda is just, it's all lies. They're just trying to get attention and get some fucking money on YouTube or whatever. Like everybody's gonna be able to see that right away. So you can't get away with it. But it's crazy. I mean, it has programmed us so much that the truth could be happening right in front of us. And we're going, well, I don't see a written out paper of all those facts in the tests you did, so I don't believe it. Because we assume everyone's fucking lying. It's like we've been programmed to think that because everyone is lying.
Yeah.
It's so fucking amazing if we can get to a reality that doesn't have that. And that's what I keep, I keep feeling the creative part of me, that there is this like artistic renaissance upon us because of things like this lifting up off of the reality, and finally people being able to have some freedom to actually go express and be authentic and not being worried about like being manipulated by someone or tricked into something or being taken advantage of. The freedom is like a lot of this recalling and remembering how to use this old like human tech, like telepathy, is just going to give so much inspiration and life to so many aspects of reality that it's exciting. It's like, a fun time to be alive, to ride that transition, like out of a darkness into something more expanded, is just going to feel amazing. I think it's going to be a many years of inspiration and like flow in life.
Yeah, it's really funny kind of to watch the collapse of the system happening. I mean, there's a lot of people really kind of, they feel like they already know exactly where this is going with this administration, and they're all preparing for, you know, a lot of them are preparing for like 1930s Germany or whatever. And just coming out of left field is what human consciousness is doing. You know, if you compare where human consciousness was in 1930s compared to now, I mean, it's not even on the same fucking map.
Yeah.
And so I just, for anyone, including like anyone who thinks they know what's coming, it's like you can't really fathom what the trickster of human consciousness is about to do. It's already doing it, but you're converging all of these things together, and this like kind of clamping in of the power systems at a time where you can't clamp in human consciousness. You can't control anything if you can't control the consciousness. And the difference between everything that's ever happened in our recorded history and now is the human consciousness, that you can't unring that bell. You can't put Pandora's fucking shit back in the box. It's done. It's just expanding at a rate that you can't change, and you can't rewind that.
Right.
And so it is such a hilarious two trains coming down the track at the same time, you know, coming towards each other. I'm really struggling with the metaphors right now. I have to pee.
Pandora's shit box.
Do you want to close here because I have to go to the bathroom, or do you want to come back and talk about something else?
I don't care. Do we have enough here?
I think we have more. Yeah.
Hour and 16 minutes. Yeah, we didn't do lines or anything. We're going to save that for later.
So the only parts of that of human design that I feel comfortable passing on are the parts that I feel like I connect to and I see them happening, you know?
Yeah.
And so in the profile lines, I'm a 1-3. I see the 1 as an investigator and I see the 3 as someone who has to like experiment and do things. I don't understand the conscious and unconscious part because I'm extremely conscious of the fact that I have to experiment and try things.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, there's so many different ways to interpret it, but I like, there's like a thinking about the unconscious and conscious part of the chart is there's a, like, some people break it up into personality and your design. And like the personality is like who the human is, who you identify as. And then the design part of the chart is like how you move through the world, like what you're doing essentially. And so harmony comes from aligning, being aware of both of those and trying to align them. And so I think the number, depending on where, if it's in your conscious or unconscious, it falls into personality or design, I believe. I mean, a lot of that has to do with gates and stuff. But,
gotcha. And I also wonder, like, how much does consciousness play into this? You know, it's when you're talking about people who are becoming increasingly self-aware, it's just having the information of the third line made me conscious of it, maybe.
Yeah.
So
we want to bust through some overview of lines real quick?
Yeah. I mean, did you want to do that today or did you want to spend more time researching the order of them? You don't really care about that?
No, we can do it. I mean, because there's only 6 lines. It's just how they combine is where you can get lost and get like deep into the nuances because sometimes the numbers inform each other or they're contrasted. But I think if we just give like a basic overview of each number and then maybe how yours works together because you have more experience with it, a 1 and 3, and I can talk about my 4-6.
Okay. I like it when you talk about your 4-6.
I'll talk about my 4-6, baby. You know that 4 and that 6, how they cuddle.
It's like, where does this go? Mark's about the sexy talk.
My unconscious and consciousness are cuddling right now.
They're cuddling?
I'm harmonizing. I feel a harmonized erection coming. Okay, let's move on. Mark's not good at sexy talk. Should we start at 6 and move backwards?
No.
No. Okay, we can start at 1.
Okay, so in the human design chart or whatever you've got a couple of numbers. So mine is a 1-3. The 1 is an investigator. We need things to have a foundation. It is the foundational number. Hilariously, I'm obsessed with foundations. I'm talking about foundations all the time. Like the whole beginning of our relationship was me making sure that we had a good foundation. It's the reason that I feel like I have to start at the beginning on every single podcast. It's because I feel like you have to do the foundation.
Yeah, you're hyper worried about the foundation of this house, that it's going to crack and leak.
I didn't even think of that. Every house is the second
It's
time
day
that I'm
we
like,
moved in. You're like, do you think? I mean, the house seems like it's moving a little bit. Do you think the foundation's all right? Yeah. So the one
we literally went into those new construction houses so I could look at their foundation.
Yeah. Foundation Jessa.
And it's the investigator. So don't try to get any slick shit past me because I'll definitely hack into all the mainframes to get.
You're definitely a PI in a different lifetime. You're a fucking private investigator that you don't want to fuck with. Yeah, you're good at the investigating for sure. And so the way I understand it too is that it's like there's a gift for dissecting knowledge, dissecting the things you're into, and being able to deep dive to build that foundation.
And I don't feel safe until I have the foundation. And so that kind of ties into, and this is all one lines have this. So that kind of ties into the thing about how I don't actually like to offer up an opinion on something when it's happening.
Yeah.
Unless it's a repeat of something I've already engaged with. I don't like the pressure of having to have a take on what's happening politically. When there's world events happening, I'm not going to say anything until I have had enough time to investigate. And I don't like the feeling of not understanding how things work. And so that's why I'm not an educated person, but I know a lot about the financial system, most things that happen in the world we currently live in. I did eventually learn a lot about. I know a lot about laws and a lot of like kind of random stuff, because if I ever end up bumping up against something, I feel deeply unsafe until I have investigated it. It's also very fun for me. And so that's part of the reason I love the internet so much, is because you can rabbit hole things. And for me, it can't be, I can't just listen to one side of things. Like, I don't know how people are just walking through the world with all these perspectives that don't involve investigating the other side with an open mind. Like, I literally cannot comprehend how you guys feel like you have solid takes on things that you've never listened to the other side. It's like so strange to me. I'm like, how do you not know you're just...
Other people get that knowledge in a different way, potentially, right? So it's like, for you, it doesn't make sense. Right. And I would say you're probably right. Most of the time, some people are actually just not in alignment with, and they're, going willy-nilly, trusting the facts. But then there are some other people, like the 2 line we're going to go to next, they have an inherent like knack for that knowledge, but they have to be alone to go access it and let it come in. But it's like that knowledge is like more, it's closer to them. Like, they're able to get in touch with it. They just need the isolation. Where, like, for the investigator, whatever you're interested in, you need to deep dive, and you have the ability to deep dive it. If you just let yourself go do it, then you get the knowledge. Where some other beings like get it differently. Yeah.
And for me, I crack jokes all the time about how I can't read. And part of that is I can read. I just can't take in information for a long time. Like, and you know this, because I can barely get through an entire podcast. I can't do long form things because I have to stop and I have to think about it, and I have to cross-reference it to things I already know.
You have to compartmentalize, put it all where it needs to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I end up losing interest in things. I feel like I get the gist, and then I lose interest. And so part of the reason every time I reference a book, I say I don't read, is because I never know if there's something horrible in one part of the book that I didn't actually read. Yeah. So I'm like, just to clarify. But the thing I love about the internet, and now, ChatGPT is just such a fucking dream for this, is that I can deep dive things. I don't have to sort through a bunch of nonsense. I'm getting bullet points. I fucking love bullet points. And then I'm like clarifying questions, and, so I can really deep dive something. But for me, I have to listen to people talk. I have to read the comments. I have to listen to the tone when they're talking, because for me, like, a lot of the things I'm investigating is I need to know where this person's head is when they were, like, everyone's perspective or whatever. I think like some one lines might be more, they can listen to long form stuff and they like more facts and concrete things. It's just, for me, it's a lot of what I'm investigating is kind of the sociological underpinnings of what makes humans do the things they're doing or whatever. And it's like, I can only investigate things I give a shit about, that I'm interested in. But if it's ever like, I have a health thing, or I think I have a health thing, or I want to have an experience. Like, at one point when I was booking a colonoscopy, which I changed my mind and canceled it, but this is the second time. But the first time I booked a colonoscopy, it's like I was deep diving colonoscopies for a while. I became an expert in everything colonoscopy.
So
I'm going to leave that in there.
Calling a cat off there.
So that is what a one line is.
All right, now we're on to the second line, Hermit.
Which I really don't know much about, other than they're a hermit.
Yeah, I mean, I know a little bit. It's so that knowledge is that you're accessing as investigator for the 2 line, the Hermit. That same knowledge is a little bit more inherent. It's like it's in there, but they can't access it without being isolated and being able to hyper focus and go down that rabbit hole. There's something that's like a need to be alone because of the aura and the ability to not be distracted by anybody else, and kind of a overwhelming obsession with whatever you're wanting to discover more of. If you're trying to do that in front of people, it's like a lot of times people just misunderstand. Be like, you're so focused. You're so like obsessed with that. Gosh. So a lot of people will be discouraged to go be isolated by themselves and deep dive something because of the judgment of that process of doing it. And I know for me as a projector, that just needs in general, like isolated time to let my aura relax and actually process something. It's very difficult to do that with anybody else around. So I don't have a 1 or a 2 in my profile, but I resonate with that energy because I do need it a lot. And I've struggled in the past with certain people not being able to communicate that boundary that I do need it. It's not about them, me wanting to be by myself. It's been difficult to do that. But so beneficial when I do. Like and now I would say my reality is very much, everybody around me knows that and respects that, and it's fucking awesome. And the ability to like actually get deeper into the knowledge or whatever's going on, there's just a need for the isolation for it. But yeah, it's still deep dives and like a lot of information. So it's similar to the Investigator as far as like you can use that time for that. But the most important thing is isolation.
And so hermits, if I remember correctly, they go through phases, right? Of kind of being out in the world and then needing to isolate. It's not constant isolation.
Yeah, it's just it's like when
very similar to a projector, I guess.
Yeah, similar to a projector, but I would say it's kind of like for a projector when I'm needing to isolate, it's because I'm burnt out. I'm becoming like short and bitter. And so I actually need to regenerate the energy. And for the Hermit, it's almost like if you're out with a bunch of people and there's a conversation about something that it comes up and you're very interested on it, and you maybe have some information, but you haven't deep dived it yet, is to almost like put a bookmark in that and go, okay, I need to find some time to isolate and then go really process this conversation and deep dive all the facts around it. And so it's like a respect to being able to really vacuum up the knowledge and really integrate it. It's better done isolated. And so it can oscillate as in if you just like, if it springs up and you're not alone, that's not the time to stress and try to go deep in it. It's just to put that for a time later. And that would be like, using your energy more how it wants to be used and find easier flow doing it that way.
Yeah. So the bullet points here has natural skills and abilities without needing extensive training, prefers alone time to refine their talents, but is often quote unquote called out by others. I hate this fucking extrovert culture that so many introverts have been pressured into. Learns best by their own process, not traditional education, and can become resentful if constantly pulled in interactions when they want to retreat. I mean, I would guess that you were a 2-line. So going back to the 1-line, needs a solid foundation of knowledge before taking action. Kelsey told me this last year when there was like, I don't know, there was something happening on the world stage and everyone who talked into a microphone was like being demanded to talk about it. And I was like, I literally feel like I can't yet, or I maybe don't want to at all, but I have not formed my fully fucking, it's the same way I felt like last week when we tried to do that episode and I'm like, I don't know. I haven't had time to form my thoughts, which is weird because I think very fast and I move very fast, but I'm not really moving out of like a mental thing. So if it's not my thing, I have a take on my things very fast. But if you want me to process data, it's just, I have to have all of the data first. And it takes a minute to get all of the data, you know? And so she told me that as a one line, you're not supposed to be someone with immediate takes ever. And you're never going to do that and be authentic. And when I think back to takes that I have expressed because I was scared of the collective homogenized whatever, they were always bullshit because I literally did not know yet.
Yeah.
Feels secure when well prepared. That's real fun with ADHD. Can be a deep expert in their field, but may struggle with imposter syndrome, which is crazy.
This is one.
Yeah. And others might look to them as a trusted authority. Okay. So the next line I have is the 3. And my understanding, the martyr, the names are so dumb. So experimenter is a better word for it. It means martyr because you're just throwing yourself into the things to get knowledge. But so the third lines can only learn through experience and only really trust experience. And the thing that's so funny about this is I am far more likely to trust someone who experienced something than someone who got a master's degree in it.
Yeah.
To me, it's just like you got a master's degree in someone else's experience. I'd rather just hear one single person who'd been there. So experimenters cannot learn through any other way but hands-on. And this was a huge issue for me in school. Like someone can't just talk at me some information, especially if I'm not interested in it, and me learn it. I have to get in there and do it. We've talked about this before. Like I can't read a recipe. I just have to kind of skim the recipe and then try it. Most of everything I talk about is personal experience. And I think sometimes I'm self-conscious about how that makes me sound self-obsessed, but I don't feel qualified.
It's like you feel that information is more valid because the way you process stuff through experience, it's valid to you. So you're sharing it in the same way. It's like, this is where the most wisdom is going to come from me is what I experienced, not what I read in the book or somebody said.
One of the things about third lines, they're extremely resilient. And I saw a reel yesterday of like a third line in like an explosion and then just kind of getting up and brushing themselves off and walking. And it said something like third lines walking into the next 20 years or whatever. Yeah. I'm so fucking grateful to have a third line because the degree to which I bounce back.
Yeah, well, and that's another thing. The third line, like, you got to be have a thick skin to the idea of failure.
Yeah, because we fail constantly.
Fail constantly. But the failure is where you're gaining the wisdom from. So you're getting all of this life experience of what works and what doesn't work. And to get the best amount of that knowledge, like you have to experience what it's like when something doesn't work. So it's like part of the process of being a third line is that you're going to have the experience of what seem to be a lot of small failures, but they actually culminate into really great wisdom that can help other people not make those same mistakes.
Yeah, and I can't say fail constantly, but failure is at the foundation of most successes for third lines.
Because it's part of the experience.
And part of that is because we have to jump in and try it. And it's like, I don't know, I can get very good at things, but yeah, it's like I have to spend a lot of time not a lot of time, but I've spent a lot of time in my life being initially bad at things and making mistakes. And my life is so many mistakes, and almost all of my wisdom comes from things I did wrong. It's like all my takes on love are because I've been every failure at love. Like all the things I'm roasting in those podcasts, I've done all those things. I'm just talking to myself when I'm doing those podcasts. Hands-on learners who improve systems by testing them, can struggle with self-doubt when things don't work out immediately. I think that's definitely something I worked with when I was younger. She's even going with the back feet.
Revving up over here. I don't know what you're doing there. She's like staring at the bird like she wants to kill it.
I've never seen them knead with their back feet before.
She's going to town.
There's a cat showing up to do some weird shit. Is she going to go to the bathroom?
No, I think she's just getting comfy.
It's very strange from back here.
Yeah. Okay, next line, 4.
Yeah, so you're a fourth line. You tell us about it.
So a fourth line is, what's the name of it? They call it?
Networker.
The networker, right. So 4 is essentially, and I've experienced this on and off, but community comes very natural. So connections that are valuable to you will be something that should be easy in life. Not that you will always experience an abundance of community, but if you need other people, it will always be a connected group somewhere that you can benefit from. For me, I say that because I've experienced both extremes of feeling like I had a strong network of friends and people that supported me and understood me. But then at certain pivots in life, I've had nobody around me that I felt was supporting. But some of that was somewhat of an illusion just because I was going through a transition and I had a lot of people misunderstand me and kind of exit, that I felt like I was just floating with nobody supporting me. But really there were a small, tight group of people that were there that were, close friends or family that were still on board and very much a part of my supported network. And so, like, as a projector, the 4, it emphasizes essentially where a projector doesn't have the energy to kind of like get things done, to start things and actually finish them. And so a lot of the times I need other people that have the energy to do those things. So as a projector, the 4 is really helpful because there's always a network of people that I can call on to help me with something that my energy is not good at. And so it's very helpful in my profile as a projector. Yeah, that's kind of my take and experience with it. What does your phone say over there?
Core themes: community, influence, stability in relationships. Strengths are a strong network, warm presence, and influential. Challenges: fears rejection, resists change, may stay in bad relationships too long.
There's the shadow side of it.
How you operate: all opportunities come through relationships. They thrive in community and connection. Needs stability before making changes, like you won't leave a job without having another one lined up. Has a natural charisma and is influential in your circles, and struggles with fear of rejection or not being accepted by your community.
So yeah, there's a shadow side of it, I guess. If that community is supposed to be natural in your energy and you don't have it, it could glitch you out. I mean, I think that's like when I kind of started learning about the lines in my profile was when I had pivoted and had nobody around me. And so when I read that, I was like, community, what? Like, everybody fucking hates me right now. And it was scary to not have people, seemingly supporting you when you're making a change. So that's interesting. Yeah, there's like a shadow side of that.
The 4th line is the only one that I know a lot of people who are 4/6s that don't resonate with the 4.
That's how I was when I first read my chart too. But I can see...
Or 2 4s also.
I can see how the 4 is like... It works when I'm in alignment.
Yeah.
And I can see the benefit of it. Like, there's times where I've tried to take on a certain process of a project or something that is just not for me. I don't have the energy to do it. And it's much easier if I have that network to like ask somebody that does have the energy to do that or is excited. And I've seen that take place in my reality when I've not taken the responsibility and tried to do everything myself.
Right.
It's really great when you have a connection of people that you can call on that are like, they're more energetically aligned to do that thing and they're excited about it, then it's fucking great. And that network becomes really powerful to, you know, achieve things and experience things that I wouldn't be able to do just by myself.
Right. And you really haven't done much as far as like a career that's by yourself.
Yeah.
All that comes through like people you're connected to.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So the fifth line is the heretic. I think it's also called like the truth teller or something. The fifth line, the way that I interpret it by watching the fifth lines that I know, they are here to break up homogenization. They usually have like a take that is different than what is coagulating in the collective. They have something called a projection field that I haven't really dove too far into the human design explanation of it, but I've watched it live in action many times. So people either pedestalize or demonize people with a fifth line. And because of this, before you learn about this and really learn how to work with this energy, fifth lines can spend their whole lives trying to be understood or trying to, I don't know, find community somewhere where they're not going to get projected onto. But once you understand that, like, people literally can't see you beyond their own projections. The fifth lines I know who have just stepped into that and just been themselves anyway and played that heretic role are so fucking powerful. But it's my nightmare. I guess I have a lot of fifth lines. Every single one of your gates is on a line also. So if it's like 55.5, I have a lot of 0.5s. So that is something that shows up a lot in my life, is I'm like terrified of
being misunderstood.
Yeah. I mean, now I don't care, but it was like a lifelong thing that I feel like I've worked through in the last couple of years for the most part. But speaking of that, I wonder if you have a lot of 0.2s. I wonder if there's actually a lot of like 2 energy in there. Because what determines your actual numbers is like where your sun and your something else is.
Yeah. The way I understand the 5-2 to be something that has there's like a universal wisdom with it. So there's like a very, like the perspective that's coming from the 5 is something that's very compatible to like a diverse group of people, that there's an ability to describe and kind of point out things that are complicated in a very palatable, universal way.
Yeah, they're super good teachers.
Yeah. And that is part of the mechanism of that projection field, is that subconsciously people are magnetized towards 5s because they subconsciously understand there's something important that I need from you that's universally like applicable. So people will feel that and pedestalize you because they know there's something there that they need. But when you say something that is difficult for them to hear and that they actually do need to hear, they then protest and be like, you're shit, you're nothing. But it's because they energetically feel how great this could be.
Yeah.
And their expectations, kind of get in the way of that and cause a projection to happen.
Yeah, so others project their expectations onto them, assuming they can fix everything. Often seen as a leader or authority, even when they don't want to be. Need strong boundaries to avoid taking on others' problems. Can be highly charismatic and influence large groups.
Yeah, so it's like the real trick to that, I think you're right. It is like being able to be still and confident and like just authentically who you are and not needing somebody else to respond a certain way. Just unapologetically being yourself, saying what you think is true to you, and not really worrying about how somebody else deals with that seems to be the most ease in that, and where all the power comes from.
Yeah. And then number 6, you have a 6 line. You want to explain that one?
Yes, a 6. So I'm a 4-6. So the 6 is really interesting. It's broken up into 3 phases of life. where the first phase is I don't know if this is how this works with other sixes, but for me, do you know about like because the 6 in the first phase of the 6, my 4 turns into a 3?
No, your 6 is a 3.
Oh, sorry, the 6
you
is
live
a 3.
as a third line. Yeah.
Okay, so that's probably true with every.
Yeah, that is the 3 life phases of the 6th line.
Is the early phase, the 6 is actually a 3. Okay, so the first part of life is you're essentially, the 6 is a 3, so it's back to the 3 is the experimental number, so it's all about like being in the world and experiencing life and absorbing wisdom from that. But it is very much like kind of being plugged into the matrix, wanting different diverse experiences, very engaged. And then after the Saturn return, which is around, 30? Mm-hmm. You go into the second phase where that 3 goes back to a 6 now. So you're no longer kind of motivated to go be in the world and experiment. You're going into a phase that they call on the roof, which is very much more internal and in a more observational kind of mode to watch life, also be going internal and processing experiences that have happened in the first part of your life, really deep diving through that, and a time to that, like, you're going to be motivated to go inwards and isolate, be alone to process these things, as well as observe reality and constantly be absorbing wisdom from that. So it's odd because the first part of your life, you could be a little bit more extroverted and socially motivated. And for me, it was like right when I hit 30, I went the other direction. Didn't want to be out and go to parties. I just wanted to be by myself all the time. And that can be really jarring because it feels, for me, I was like, what's wrong with me? It used to be easy to go out and like get lost and experience things and want to be social. Now all I want to do is be alone. I think there's something wrong with me. Until I learned this human design stuff, which wasn't, luckily it was like a couple years into 30 that I learned about it. And when I did, then I realized I was like, oh, I should just let go. This actually does feel natural to me. I'm wanting to go inside. There's a purpose for this. And that purpose really it's that middle phase to be able to kind of embody who you are and learn, and also just process the earlier part of life. And all of this is moving towards this last phase where you come off the roof, kind of come back into the reality with a desire to engage and experience, but bringing all of the wisdom that you have pulled out of the previous part of life. And so this is where, and that's around 50-ish, where you
they're set up astrologically. So it's your Saturn return triggers the roof. You come off the roof after your Chiron return, which is around 50.
Right. So around 50 then is where the 6s truly begin to shine and step into their purpose by, again, just being able to absorb all the wisdom from life and now have it as something that you live and breathe and you are and you share with the world. Yeah, the biggest part for me and other 6s that I've talked to is like, it seems to be the biggest difficulty is that transition from being a 3, being external, and going into the second phase on the roof where you want to be isolated and by yourself, but might feel pressure from other people to be like you once were as a 3. And all of that difficulty and the pressure in there was hard for me and hard for a lot of people to accept. But the moment that I just accepted it and was like, I saw it in my design that there was a purpose for it, and it's a long process, but it was just so liberating because I didn't feel guilty now about staying home by myself or putting my head in a book or just like, looping over and thinking about earlier parts of life, that it was okay to be doing that. And I didn't need to apologize for not going out. And the second I did that, it was like a liberation. And then I actually felt like I got more done in the isolation. I was actually able to lean into it because I saw the purpose for it. And as I'm getting closer and closer to that Chiron return, it feels like I'm prepping for that. I'm prepping for a life that I can really like be still in myself, be engaged in the world, and still, hold a higher awareness to be able to share the experience. So it's exciting to me. I mean, I'm probably biased because I have the 6, but that it's really liberating to just embrace that idea and not bend to the kind of pressure that culture puts on us to actually get out there and engage in the world.
Right.
And then the only other thing I would say is that it's also not like, could be misunderstood, like being on the roof is a time to actually not do anything. Like, don't be actionable in life. Like we're only supposed to be, meditating and processing things or just watching people. You can still be productive. You can still make things and create, but the main focus of that time is to just be sensitive and absorb things and process. So it doesn't mean you can't create.
I think it's
just
the
a different
way
mechanism.
you're learning, right? So on here it says 0 to 30 years, lives as a third line, making mistakes and learning through trial and error. And then 30 to 50 years, retreats, observes, refines wisdom, and integrates lessons. And then 50 plus years, becomes a true role model, guiding others with lived wisdom. I think it's like how you learn. Mm-hmm. And so for your experience, I think it gets kind of equated with social and whatever, because it was like around 30 is where you wanted to stop touring. And you were just constantly around people and constantly kind of having to do you weren't able to like even process or integrate all the experiences you'd had because it was constant stimuli, right? And the lessons you learned your life up to 30 were kind of trial and error, trying things and then whatever. But most of the lessons that you have integrated in the last 10 years are much less trial and error and much more observation of things, right? And so it's kind of like how you learn. There are some 6 lines that are still out there very busy. I do notice that most 6 lines have something that happens in their early 30s that drastically changes the way that they live.
Yeah.
For you, it was like a pressure to stop living that way. But there are other people who get kind of knocked out of the way that they were living.
Yeah. It'll just kind of happen. It'll force you onto the roof.
Right. And so then the way that you learn just changes more than anything else. Like you're on the roof looking at things from a zoomed out perspective, where a third line is very in the trenches. I mean, I'm a third line. I'm not a wildly social person, but I am constantly throwing myself into things to figure them out from the inside. And that is like has remained consistent throughout my entire life. And my life is really kind of broken up into these like, and this was the phase where I was this, 2 other things it says is feels a deep calling to live authentically and lead by example. You are the authenticity police. And can feel impatient early in life because they sense they're meant for something bigger. The thing I like about this is that it really highlights something that I have sensed. I don't have a 6 line, but realizing that what I came here to do in life was really to live the entirety of the life. But what I came here to share with the world, I couldn't share with the world until I was middle-aged because I had to gather all that data my whole life and I had to make all these mistakes and experiment with all these things. And I feel like the Western American culture puts so much pressure on us to produce something before we're 30 or have a thing. And we put so much emphasis on youth. And so little in this culture, so little emphasis on the wisdom that you can only have when you're older. I mean, I had like cool, unique takes when I was young, but I didn't have any fucking wisdom because you literally cannot have wisdom until you've had all that life experience, right? And so I like that human design helps us remember that like maybe what you came here to do, you're not going to know until you're in your 50s.
Yeah.
You know, and so all this propaganda that we've consumed, all this conditioning that if you haven't done it by the time you're 30, you're not going to do it is actually really fucking stupid.
I think that's my favorite thing about human design in general is that it really gives a like clear descriptions about how different everybody's energy operates. And so there's this like paradoxical idea that like we are all more alike than we think, which on a macro spiritual sense is like very awesome and great. But then we're also programmed in the reality to like homogenize everything. So you're only going to like be friends with people that think like you and are like you. And there's just so much programming that I think that we're each given to like be a certain way to be happy and successful. And human design shows you that there's like so many different ways to actually be successful and be happy. And it's about following, like figuring out how your energy works and deconditioning how you were taught your energy works if it's out of alignment.
Right.
And for the most part, it's like there's so much homogeny in us learning like how to be in the world that human design really like separates and shows you the diversity of how different people function. And I just feel like that's like I'm hoping, we talk about this a lot, but that the businesses in the future will be structured around human design.
Yeah.
And it's so liberating knowing that there like are certain things that I'm really good at that I can do, but then there's other things that I was taught that I should do that are actually clunky and difficult for me to do. With human design, it's like, oh, I'm just not supposed to be doing that. But I grew up in the reality thinking I'm supposed to do that. Like thinking I'm supposed to, if I want something, show up every day and work hard and like push yourself. For a projector, that's not the best way to get there, actually. If I'm constantly doing that, I'm going to be out of energy. I'm going to be bitter. I'm not going to have the clarity. So for me, it's actually better to find the right timing of when to work and, really having to learn how to like manage my own energy is how I will find success and ease. But to somebody that's got the like generator energy that's supposed to push and work hard every day and they have the energy, it's going to look like I'm lazy and malfunctioning when really I'm actually in alignment. It just doesn't look like it does for you. And my success might come from just like a 2-hour focused attention on something where someone else needs to do that for like a solid 2 days or something to focus on it. So I really like how human design kind of shows you where, like how different all the energies are and gives you an ability to like not have to fit in a certain box that everyone else is fitting in. It's like, it's okay to be different and unique and embody like the way your energy works leads to much more ease, flow, and success. And it's just going to look different than other people.
By the way, this is why I think there is, some people are like, what is with all these labels right now? Like, why is everyone saying they're autistic or they have ADHD, or then there's like all these fine-tuned, nuanced aspects, PDA or executive dysfunction, and then there's TikToks being made about them. What it's doing is it's making the people who experience these things feel like there is a category of reason for the way I move through the world, because the only category of reason I've ever heard is from the homogenized masses saying that there's something wrong with me because I can't just do what I'm told, or that there's something wrong with me because sometimes I can't do anything but sit here and stare at a wall, And so I know that for some people it's like annoying or eye-rolly that people are currently, I don't think this is going to last, but being like, I am this and I've got autism and I'm da-da-da. Yeah. It's the same thing that human design is doing, which is saying like, hey, you're a projector, you're not meant to be a worker bee. And all of that judgment that you've felt, and some of that's from like actual people, and then some of that's just from the conditioning in the field.
Yeah.
is not your shit. Like, you have a right to be this thing. And human design, by breaking up all these different energies, I agree. Like, the thing that's so powerful about it is it's like a permission slip to do things your own way, to get to know your own energy and to just kind of operate in that energy. And the thing I like about these lines, there's one other thing about them. There's the upper trigram and the lower trigram. So 1 through 3 is about personal discovery and internal focus. These profiles learn through internal processes, study, experience, and self-exploration. And the upper trigram is external influence and impact on others. So this is 4 through 6. These profiles affect others through relationships, leadership, and wisdom. My understanding, and this could not be true, but I think when I first learned this stuff, I think what the person said is like people, like, so a 1-3, which is the only one out of all of these that is exclusively in the lower trigram, because you have like a 1-4, a 2-4, a 2-5.
You're
a 3-5.
exclusively in the lower, and I'm exclusively in the higher.
Yeah.
Just realized.
So 1-3s are meant to be self-obsessed. You're kind of here about yourself, figuring yourself out. And something that I'm always kind of self-conscious about is that I do feel like I bring every conversation back to myself, which is also kind of autistic. But that is the framework through which I see everything. And I've also noticed that when I hear other 1-3s talking before I knew this, I would read them as maybe like narcissist, not narcissistic as all the things that come with like NPD, but like self-obsessed.
Yeah.
And that's actually exactly how a 1-3 is supposed to be. Like, I'm here, and then you add manifesting generator on top of that. Like, I'm here to understand myself. I'll share that with you.
Your own ass all
but
the
I'm
time.
very up my own ass. I'm extremely up my own ass.
Always just cooking dinner for herself, not the kids. Always just
I'm self-centered. Like, I'm the
room,
center
not
of
the rest
it.
Of the room.
No, I enjoy being of service, but even that is for me. It's because I enjoy it. Okay, so are you all right to be sitting here in this position right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just keeping my back stretched.
Okay. So
I've got a shoulder injury. I'm not. Whatever. God.
What did you think?
Why you were going? Are you okay sitting here? No. I got to poop.
So in these profile lines, and I'm not going to get too far into this part because I feel like I don't really understand this part yet, but in your deep, deep cut human design chart, which you'll probably have to pay money for because it's not on the easy peasy ones, it starts to get into what your taste is, what your environment is, what your digestion is. There's like a lot of other aspects of it. And then there's colors, which I don't really understand yet, and tone. But somewhere in there is the motivation, what your motivation is. And those motivation also correlates to lines. But your main lines, your one, like my 1-3 doesn't necessarily directly correlate to my motivation. I happen to have a 1-line motivation also. So the motivations are fear, shame. Most of them suck. Guilt. What are the 6th motivations in human design? Fear, shame, guilt, innocence. Hold on. And then within those motivations, there is a transference. So if you're in the not self, the thing that's motivating you will be different than what your motivation is supposed to be. Okay. So the 6 of them are: number 1 is fear. Number 2 is hope. Number 3 is desire. Number 4 is need. Number 5 is guilt. And number 6 is innocent. So if you have fear motivation and you're in the not self, it's going to be transferred to need. People with fear motivation seek security through knowledge, preparation, and caution. I'm not going to get into all that. A healthy fear motivation leads to deep research, mastery of subjects, and wise decision-making. A transferred need motivation, instead of trusting their own insight, they focus on what others should be doing and fixate on external needs rather than their own clarity. Hope motivation transfers to guilt. Desire motivation transfers to innocence. Need motivation transfers to fear. And guilt motivation transfers to hope. And innocence motivation transfers to desire. I don't know why any of those are what they are, and so I'm not going to get into that, but that is a fun rabbit hole if you can find what yours is. I know that I have fear motivation, and you have guilt.
Guilt, yeah.
Motivation.
What is the opposite of guilt when it turns into?
Hope. Which is so funny. You know, because if we think of like guilt, we think like, oh, we shouldn't have guilt, and then... But a lot of these words, once again, they mean something else. So people with guilt motivation feel called to serve, take responsibility, and help others. They naturally want to take care of people and make a difference in tangible ways. They thrive when they contribute to the well-being of others through practical action. When it's healthy, it leads to them being effective caretakers, healers, or activists. When it's transferred to hope, they fall into passive wait-and-see mindset, losing their ability to take action. Interesting. So kind of magical thinking.
That. Yeah, totally.
That's very interesting. So unaligned, they disengage and stop taking initiative, expecting things to work out on their own. God, that's so fucking interesting. So anyway, we as a collective, I have so many thoughts about this. We as a collective have... We'll start here.
This is talking about the background frequencies changing. It's going to change all this, right?
Yeah. So we all have these, and you have to look into your chart because I don't really understand the mechanisms of how you determine what is what. But
motivation is what you're talking about?
Yeah. Everyone has like a motivation that plays into how you show up in the world. So in these global cycles that we're talking about, the cross of planning, cross of sleeping phoenix, you have that 400 years, and then that 400 years is split up into about 60-year chunks. And because it's a procession, it goes backwards through those chunks. So if you look back at the cross of planning, broken into these 60-year chunks, there is kind of a different flavor to how the cross of planning is manifesting in those 60-year chunks. So a global cycle starts with a 6 motivation. So that's innocence. And the innocence motivation, I would say, is the coolest one.
Because you have it?
No, I have fucking fear motivation. Right. I'm pretty jealous about people that have innocence motivation. So innocence motivation is moving through life without attachment to an outcome. I mean, thrive when they follow what feels right without needing a why. They are not here to chase goals, control things, or be highly ambitious. Instead, they naturally inspire others just by being themselves. A healthy innocence motivation allows life to unfold naturally and act when it feels correct. A transferred to desire motivation starts chasing ambition and external success, but it feels hollow and forced. So the background frequency comes with these motivation chunks, and the first line started in the late 60s, and that's fear. So like when we say we're living in a fear-based reality, that fear-based reality for the most part has been happening for about 60 years. And if you look at the progression in, let's just say, United States society from the late 60s till now, we were latchkey kids. Now we are helicopter parents. The amount of freedom that we had in just the way that we moved through the world and the way we took risks and shit, and how it has just clamped in. And now we're in this kind of big brother surveillance state. But all of that comes from everyone's afraid.
Yeah.
And fear motivation says, like, I need to be prepared for whatever's coming. And I think about how this energy is about to switch. And when it switched from what would it have been? It would have been hope, I guess, which is really interesting. So it was hope.
And then it went into the fear.
And then it went into fear. So,
and what's coming after it?
Innocence. So we're going back to a 6th line. So we're
starting going into innocence. Perfect.
Yeah. So we're starting the Cross of Sleeping Phoenix, which that transition is going to be really scary. The combination of the Cross of Sleeping Phoenix hitting while we're still in fear motivation would be pretty fucking rough, because everyone is trying to find the foundation and there is no foundation. And everyone is obsessed with trying to get in front of or prepare for things. Like my entire TikTok is like trying to sell me life straws and fucking backup batteries,
Prep.
you know, solar powered when the grid goes down, when the grid goes down, when the grid goes down. And that's just because we're kind of dancing with that Cross of Sleeping Phoenix energy. And the Cross of Sleeping Phoenix just isn't... I feel like the fear motivation is very compatible with the Cross of Planning in the way that innocence motivation is very compatible with the Cross of Sleeping Phoenix. So me, as someone who has that fear motivation, has had that my whole life, I do go through occasional windows where I'm like overly preparing for things. I think specifically when I'm just coming out of a big timeline shift, you'll see me get more, like, we crack jokes about me acting like we were going to get home invaded 5 minutes after moving into this house. But overall, I am just really good at anticipating potential hiccups and moving around those. And it doesn't, I'm not like riddled with anxiety because I am just kind of motivated by creating that security. But what's happening when the background frequency is doing that is you have all these people who are not native to this energy, who have not lived with this energy their entire life, and it's in the background. So it's just kind of conditioning you, and it's turning people, like, everyone's terrified of everything. Everyone's so fucking afraid. So now it's just going to switch on February 15th, 2027 to, we'll just see what's up.
To innocence.
Yeah, to just like, that background frequency is going to be, that just feels like such a warm blanket to me as we're transitioning into this, that there is also this thing kind of holding you and telling you, just trust yourself to meet the moment. That's really the kind of the log line of innocence motivation is, you don't need to fucking prepare for every potential outcome. You're going to have whatever you need when it gets here. And we're just going to kind of feel it out. We're going to you're going to trust yourself is like such a good foundation, to get people into how to operate in the Cross of Sleeping Phoenix, which you cannot prepare for. It is not linear, and it is not, you're not going to find safety and security in any of your fucking mental plans. Your safety and security is going to come from your ability to meet the moment.
So it's going to be vibey, though.
It's going to be vibey.
It's just all about vibes.
I think it's going to be...
What's the vibe?
Yeah.
How do I respond? I don't know. I'll just see what the vibe is when I get there.
Yeah.
I love it.
I feel like we don't have that natally, but I feel pretty aligned with that energy at this point in my life. And I think it's just through trial and error for so long. I eventually learned, like, oh, I just have whatever I need when it's time.
Yeah.
You know,
when I'm in like alignment, I can really just feel like I'm just in the right spot consciously. I experience reality like that. Like the wildest thing will happen and I'll be able to just totally deal with it and handle it with no problem at the right time perfectly when I'm like that. It's when I'm glitched and attached to some other kind of ideal output that things get squirrely. It's so nice when that happens, when you just kind of trust that you can meet it in the moment and it works. You just coast through. It's such a better use of energy. But that is going to be uncomfortable to go from a, constantly turning your head to make sure you're safe and prep reality to a just vibe it, just trust it'll happen. I think there's a bit of an adjustment to that.
Well, I mean, I feel like it must already be bleeding into the reality the way the Cross of Sleeping Phoenix is. Yeah. I believe that energy bleeds. And so I believe in cusps in a lot of things. And we're obviously already being influenced by the Cross of Sleeping Phoenix. Now, the Cross of Sleeping Phoenix is a 400-year cycle, so I would assume that the cusp of that is like 40 years on either side.
Yeah.
But obviously, every day we get closer to it, the more obvious that energy is. So if this is a 60-year cycle, I would assume the innocence motivation is making itself available 3 years out.
For sure.
You know? And I feel like I am being influenced by innocence motivation because I was attached and tried to control things for most of my life. And I would say specifically since 2020, more and more every day, I just trust the vibes. Like I trust I guess not even since 2020. I'd say probably 2020 was where I was kind of forced to relinquish a lot of control, 2020, 2021. So I would say, yeah, the last few years, I feel more and more equipped to meet the moment and more trusting in things in a way that's even, it's going alongside my fear motivation. It's not necessarily contradicting it, but it's like, I trust my ability to know when not I need to prepare for something.
Yeah. And I almost feel like that there's going to be, it's like at some point, I mean, with the amount of things that are happening just this year already that have created a like upwelling of, oh shit, I need to prep or I need to do this and that because of this new information that's come out. And then next week there's more information. So like 1 week it's like prep for a flood. You get all prepped, and then the next week it's like prep for a fire. And then you get all prepped for a fire. And the next week it's like, there's aliens coming. So just fucking prep for something. And I think it's eventually going to get to this point where people are, like, there's nothing to do. Like, I can't prep enough. I've lost track of what I'm supposed to be scared of.
Right.
I guess I'm just going to fucking vibe it out. I guess I don't know. I'm just going to go with it because people are just exhausted with the trying to make sure they're in the right place, you know? And I think that's going to be part of it too, is like, and that's what I was saying the other day with the TikTok phenomena and the singularity happening. It's like stuff's moving so quick. At some point, you're going to have to like let go of trying to control it because it's actually just impossible now. And it might naturally set people into a timeline where it's like they don't have enough fucking energy to even manage the craziness that's going on. So they're going to have to relinquish control. I feel like I see that already happening.
Yeah. I mean, where did we have the conversation about people like kind of got traumatized? I cannot fucking remember where I talk about what now. People got so traumatized by 2020 that they're now all just trying to predict the next thing.
Yeah.
That's all fear motivation.
Yeah, that's the other thing is like the fucking upwelling in predictors, like prophecy people. There's like so many people calling what's going to happen next week because everyone's afraid to fucking, they want to be safe and know what's coming, you know? Yeah, that's definitely obvious right now.
So if you're not going from a procession, you know, the one line is the foundation and the sixth line is the zoomed out, now I get it, you know, think of someone at the end of their life, you know, that kind of non-attachment, trust in whatever it is, because you've already been through the ringer. We are going from, it's such an interesting way to do things. We are going from the foundation of the cross of planning, which is why all these things are being revealed about all of it, right? Colonization. We're finding out how other people lived and how the cross of planning actually worked for them. After spending the entire cross of planning, American citizens and Chinese citizens not having any idea what really is happening in the other place because the governments have controlled the narrative. And now that's coming out. All of the blackmail and the secrets and the history of what happened here and the whatever, everything's coming out because the foundation is being revealed because we're kind of reviewing and letting this go. But then the sixth line of the cross of Sleeping Phoenix kind of picks you up and puts you into the perfect state to be able to navigate the cross of sleeping phoenix, it's really going to help us shift into that energy. But in 400 years, they're going to be reviewing all of the negatives.
The shit that happened from vibing.
Yeah. Yeah, all the negatives of the cross of planning. Yeah. Especially, I don't know what's after that, but if we're moving into something more tribal, they're naturally going to have kind of maybe a bad taste in their mouth about some of the individuality part. I mean, I'm not really sure because there's also this elevation of consciousness happening. But yeah, so if you're feeling super afraid and overwhelmed with the need to prepare, that vibe is going to change, and you're going to feel a lot more capable of handling what's coming. I've noticed with a lot of people who are terrified right now, when you really like get into a conversation with them, a lot of it's conditioning. Yeah. A lot of it's what ifs. And that's all fear motivation.
Yeah, totally.
Like you're like time traveling. It's like, just deal with what's happening in the actual moment. We have no fucking idea how this is going to play out.
It's not so liberating to just fucking let go. It's still scary in some circumstances, like because there is an unknown. But man, the amount of energy we can waste by looping on what ifs and trying to micromanage and control the what if is like, whew, it's so much energy wasted to that. To just let go and be like, you know what? I'll just figure it out when it comes. Is so fucking liberating.
It can be really helpful to. Because I've definitely gotten swept up in what ifs, on the global stage. It can just be helpful to remember that, like, I chose to incarnate at this moment. So that means that whatever I need to meet this moment, I was born with.
Yeah.
And that's the experience I chose to have. The material reality and the way that we've set up this society really makes us feel like being attached to it or resisting it makes us a good person or whatever. And I'm not saying like resistance, like sharing your authentic take or whatever, but I'm talking about the kind of resistance that taxes your body and taxes your nervous system because you're like, this shouldn't be. It's like, well, it is, and you're here, so it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Otherwise it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's moral or great. It just means it is. You're here in this moment. You have what it takes to survive this moment, or you don't, or you're not going to survive it. It's the stress of it's not helping you survive it.
Yeah.
Especially when this is like the beginning of a world that's really based on how you harness your energy. And so, but also nothing's going to turn out the way you think it's going to turn out. Yeah. I mean, this is just the thing right now is people are going back through the cross of planning and they're going, here's the patterns I'm recognizing from the cross of planning. I know where we're going. And it's like when I tell you that all the data gathered in the last 400 years will mean fuck all when human consciousness is influenced by a different energy.
Yeah.
That's what's so fucking cool about this shit. It's like, it's literally a video game that's changing to a different video game. Nothing you learned in Call of Duty is going to help you in Mario Kart. It's all different buttons. It's a completely different objective. It's a completely different characters. So just get to know the new energy as much as possible and know that energy is going to affect whatever past thing is trying to repeat itself.
Do you think it's really Call of Duty to Mario Kart, or is it more like, like World of Warcraft to Sims?
I'm just not a big gamer like you, and so I don't know.
I'm not a big gamer, you fucking bitch. I'm constantly always trying to hide my nerdiness, and Jessa likes to reveal it. I'm not like a gamer. I don't have a game chair. Well, you're the one that just like
busted out some deep cut fucking video games.
Yeah, I was just trying to be funny because I feel like going from, what did you say the original one? Going from Call of Duty to Mario Kart is just a very weird jump from those two realities. Where World of Warcraft, which I've never played.
It's a very big jump.
Yeah, I guess it's a bigger jump. I was just trying to be funny and it didn't work, and now I'm just revealing that I'm a nerd.
I've played Pole Position on Atari.
You sure that wasn't at the strip club down the street?
Jesus, Mark.
Pole Position?
Pole Position.
What is that?
It was like a race car game on Atari. in the
Atari.
80s.
Yeah, sorry. This is like fucking, didn't know we were pulling out the vintage.
I'm vintage.
Yeah, I know. You are patinaed pretty nicely.
And then Super Mario Brothers 2, I think. Was there a 2? Yeah, I don't know. You were 8. Yeah. And then there was a Friday the 13th video game.
Okay, we don't need to hear the fucking vintage games that nobody knows about. Thank you for doing that.
But that I wanted so bad, and then I literally never figured out what you do in this game other than walk around. I played this game. I put more effort into that game than any other game, and I could not figure out what happens in this game other than this dude walking.
There's some games now that it's like they're super meta. It's just like you're supposed to just walk around.
Yeah, it's like, am I not supposed to? I never found a person to kill. I never found a weapon. I never found anything. I literally just walked this thing in a mask around. And I played it so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not. I like video games. I'm not a gamer. I don't have a gaming chair or like a fucking headset. I just like getting my mind kind of exited from this reality, and I like playing a little Call of Duty. You know,
yeah, no one's judging you, buddy.
But I'm not like a nerdy gamer. Nobody's judging you. It's just always this battle between me and you, where I'm like, can we just keep my gaming life somewhat private? I don't like the association that comes with I'm going to play my video games. You know, it's my own. This is my own projection. I'm very uncomfortable with you misunderstanding me. So, for the record, I play Call of Duty every now and then. Okay, that's it.
If you want to book a session with Mark, you have to do it before the hours of 5 to 9 because he's playing Call of Duty.
Yeah, unless you want to meet up on Call of Duty and we can play a quick match and then we'll talk about your creativity and your gun choice. Bonus points for whoever can name how many times Jessa said foundation in this episode.
That's the drinking game?
No, it's just bonus points.
Oh.
Drinking game. We don't drink.
Right, you can drink kombucha. You can drink an adaptogen. Do you know what drinking game means?
No.
Every time someone says a certain word, then...
Yeah, I know what drinking game is. Just usually it's fun because you're going to drink more of something that's going to fuck you up. Kombucha is not going to make me get fucked up. It's going to make me more healthy. So what is this game?
Oh, you're kind of a dick.
Yeah. If you need to, just call me. I'm doing sessions where I will just be a dick to you and tell you you should be playing another video game.
This is what people should book sessions with a Capricorn projector for, is to have blunt.
Tell you like it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I try to do that most of the time.
Yeah.
There's some that sometimes it's difficult because people are very set in their ways. But yeah, that's what I try to do because I know how helpful that has been for me when people have done that.
Yeah.
But sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it's a little burn.
Yeah, after I did nervous system work, I feel like I became so much more effective in my sessions because I used to dance around the blunt thing.
Yeah.
For 2/3 of the session. I would usually eventually say it most of the time, but now it's just very comfortable for me to be like, well, you're kind of lying to yourself here.
Yeah, I had a problem with blunts too. Different problem.
Oh, we know.
Being blunt.
Lots of blunts.
Being the blunt.
Blunting 6 times a day.
I am one with these 6 blunts.
All right, that's it. Bye.